You are officially the 4th housing secretary in Rhode Island in 3 years, so you've had some predecessors.
Yes.
What do you plan on doing differently?
Well, one thing I've already done is issue an org chart for the staff for the budget office, so they know why and how and when we're hiring, what we're hiring, why we're hiring. Bring some organization to that, which I think gives makes the budget office happy, makes my staff happy. They know, they're clear who reports to whom. I am a housing person for sure, but I'm also a very good manager, and I pay attention to the organization that I manage and the people that I manage. So that will take up a good amount of my time as well. I think others share this with me, but I am very transparent. And I've told my office that I think the secretary and the department should be very outward facing. We can't do this without partnerships. So I've already started meeting with folks. And you know, there's a really good spirit. People want to help us make this work and partner with us. So I'm very hopeful.
When coming into this position, did you find that the department lacked organization and lacked partnerships?
Definitely lacked organization. There had not been an org chart yet. That sounds trivial maybe to a lot of people, but it meant staff really didn't know who related to what for what reason, let alone the outside world. We had some partnerships starting, but I think I'm accelerating that outreach and that affirmative action around the partnerships. And I had met people when I was doing the consulting, so I've had some folks to fall back on to help me.
Did it surprise you that in 3 years so little has been accomplished, including a simple organization chart?
Clearly the change in leadership several times over meant people were getting their feet wet again and bringing in their own perspective. So that kind of lack of stability is always going to be an obstacle. I don't think I know that being a housing person, having been in the department even as a consultant for a couple of years, a lot of the staff there know me, I know them, so I come in with a little bit of a head start, and I think I have brought some stability. Morale is on the upswing. I do think there are some programs that we should have gotten off the ground more quickly. That tends to be one of my skills. I make decisions quickly. I told my staff, you can always come and debate with me, but make a decision and we move on. If we've made a mistake, we'll rectify it, you know?
What types of programs could we have gotten off the ground more quickly?
We have a municipal assistance for transit-oriented development, which is now is going to go out, but that could have gone more quickly. We are funding a study on the fiscal impacts of new housing in communities. That could have gone out more quickly. We are in January. We could have planned for the winter before I dropped in December.
Yes, that's a big one. So let's skip to that right now and then we'll go back. So, I mean, one of the biggest issues is obviously a winter shelter plan, and I know that the executive director of homelessness response just resigned. Was a winter shelter plan in place before she resigned, or does this force the department to start at ground zero again?
No, and I want to be clear about two aspects. In the past, we've opened shelters just for winter. This year, we kept the shelters that based on feedback from providers, instead of open shut, we kept those open. So we were at about the same number of beds we had last year, but they've actually been year-round beds. So that nomenclature of winter shelter response is a little bit outdated. The contracts for the hubs, the warming centers, they just went out. I wish they had gone out a little bit sooner, but people got their award letters, they knew they were coming, and in their goodwill, they've opened up. They have their contracts and they've opened up. So it's that supplementary.
It took until January for that to happen?
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
I feel like the folks in the office are dealing with circumstances that they didn't create. They are working extremely hard. They care. Our providers care. I should not be in this position if we're there again, the same place next year.
When would you realistically like it to happen?
Well, the whole system, the round for funding for shelters period, I think should happen in March or April. Really give ourselves time, don't put it out in the summer when, people aren't necessarily around. And my staff, we're in sync on that, so that's the plan. And then anything that's supplemental, and of course we're going to have to wait and see what our resources are. Anything supplemental for winter should be going out probably May, June. Really, if you think about a cycle, got to respond to an RFP, got to make a decision, get a contract out.
When you think of all of this happening in January, before you started your tenure, has the department failed homeless people in the past?
No, I don't think so. We have almost 1,300 beds out there. It has to be a response beyond the department. We've got, and I do think the failure in so many places is a lack of coordination, not just in Rhode Island. So, we need to coordinate better with our sister agencies. What are they doing to divert people? And what are we doing to pick those people up that can't be diverted, that need to be part of our emergency response system? Actually, this morning, just met with my staff and we started mapping out what would this ecosystem look like if we had our druthers. And that's not to criticize anyone else, our partner agencies. And this is what I want to use the Interagency Council for, right? We've got all the players at the table. Let's make sure we're coordinated. We know who's on first for what piece of the pie and who's responsible. What's our responsibility? It's been quite vague, right? It's been like sort of do everything. And we shouldn't be operating in isolation. We do that to ourselves. We're not going to continue to do that.
Now, the president of Crossroads told us yesterday that, quote, "This is the most urgent homelessness crisis that I've seen in my 30 plus years in the business." What's being right now to address that homelessness crisis, and do you agree with that statement?
Well, that statement is driven a lot by the numbers, right, that are being published in terms of who's on the street. If you're counting people who are couch surfing, which was acknowledged yesterday, then that's not a reliable number. So we're going to work with our partners, with the coalition and others. Let's get some reliable data. I don't know what the problem is I'm solving for at this point. Has homelessness increased? Yes. Have we been doing collectively a good enough job on diversion and problem solving? No. We need to help, and this is where I want to emphasize, we need to help the folks that just got a medical bill and can't pay their rent that month. That we can solve that, right? Or the car, I said this yesterday, the car broke down and they can't get to work. But we can solve that, and that's a one-time thing. So I think we really need to be thinking about this. And Rhode Island Legal Services, who just got a great grant from HUD, they're doing wonderful work on eviction prevention. So I think it's, it's the diversion, it's the prevention of folks falling into the homelessness situation. And then once they do get there, and I think we can make it a greatly reduced number, then how do we pick them up, get them housing stabilized, and move back into permanent housing?
You mentioned reliable data. Do we have a lack of reliable data right now?
I have questions about it, and I will be...
What types of questions?
How is it gathered? Well, how are you counting? Who are you counting? How are you training the folks that are gathering the data? So we do have some questions about the data, and we will work with our partners, the COC and the coalition. And if the data is correct and the gathering methods have integrity, then it is what it is. I'm not going to fight facts. I just want to make sure I understand, I really have the facts.
Okay, so you have questions on overall how they're doing the counting, if there really are that many homeless people on the streets.
Yes.
That's something that you're not sure of right now?
Correct.
Now, there was supposed to be an audit on homelessness funding under then Secretary Pryor on kind of where the funding was going, like how Crossroads was using it, how different organizations were using it. I don't believe that was ever done. Would you like the same type of audit to be done? Has that been talked about at all?
I haven't heard the phrase audit. We are doing a much more careful review of invoices that come in, review of eligible expenses, programs we think we're funding, and we've caught some things and sent some invoices back. But I think that's right now our contracts have tightened up and our invoice review is tightening up. So I think that's how we're managing it.
So you're getting a closer look at the money.
Absolutely.
Do you know how much money has been spent on homelessness over the past year, like in 2024? If you don't off the top of your head,
I don't
get
off the
it.
top of my head. I know someone put it in front of me recently.
We
have it.
Okay. From what you've seen so far, are you pleased with how it's been used?
We're a little bit, time is going to tell. I'm very pleased, and the ED, Tara would say, the contracts are our means of systems change. And she and Ben Haney have spent a lot of time working on the form of contract, getting accountability measures and performance standards included that are measurable. So I am pleased the way this team is administering the funding, yes.
The, what is it called? I wrote it down. The means to enter the homeless
CES?
system. Yes, CES.
Yes.
I'm like, I know there's a name for it. It seems like that's kind of a mess right now in the sense that it is overwhelmed from what some of our reports have found. We've obviously devoted a lot of money to homelessness in the past year.
Yes.
Should we have spent more money on that, on hiring more people to handle the call volume?
No. I think the question we have to ask is by the way we have the state of Rhode Island and our partners, we've structured CES, have we clogged it up? So for instance, HUD does not require those that are seeking individual shelter placements to go through CES. The state made a decision a number of years ago to do that. So we have to ask, have we clogged the system up? Were there unintended consequences to what we did? And this past weekend, it's horrible when people need shelter immediately and there's any wait for them. I get that. At one point, it literally was a systems glitch, and the coalition had to get the tech in from the computer, and that's horrible timing, but I can't criticize the staff or the leadership of the coalition for something like that. But again, all these questions are open. All of these questions are open. I want a real schematic of how our system works. Where have we created rules in the state of Rhode Island that no one else imposed on us, that have maybe are creating bottlenecks, maybe misrepresenting the situation? So all of that is open over the next few months. We're going to draw it all out. We will examine it, and we will examine it with partners. We're not going to do it in isolation. I don't want unintended consequences. I want to serve the homeless folks. And one of the best ways to do that is to understand really what the problem is and how to best deploy our resources collectively. So we'll take that thoughtfully, and we'll do it with our partners, but I'm not going to be afraid to ask questions.
Right now, with the crisis of the temperatures plummeting, homeless people outside, CES clogged up, is there anything you plan on doing right now to address that?
We have fully expended our funds. We know our partners are opening their doors, expanding their capacity in the moment. I am not sure what else folks want to do. I know there's been a lot of talk, of course, about a declaration of emergency, which I suppose some folks think could override like fire code, and that probably is true. But then I got a question, do we really want to put people in basements that aren't sprinklered? Like church basements, right? Years ago, anywhere you'd open a church basement.
But could you argue that you could die of the freezing weather versus?
I could, yes, definitely could. But we know that being in a basement without appropriate means of egress is a hazardous situation, and we can debate back and forth. But I believe people are getting off the street. We've opened our warming hubs, this has to be a collective response. The state can't do everything. So I was pleased, that listen to me, Providence is opening their city council chambers. Great. I mean, good. I wish there were other partners that would think about doing the same thing to serve the folks that they see in front of them.
So what's interesting about that is obviously the city council chambers aren't meant to live in, so can't the same argument be said for places like Echo Village, where you could sign, not you, but the governor could sign an emergency declaration and open it, and you can say to people, hey, you signed this document at your own risk.
Well, first of all, now you bring the lawyer out at me. You can never sign away that kind of risk on your own behalf. But city council chambers, I'm assuming, actually are in pretty good shape for having people sit there, just like libraries are. And libraries are great partners during the day. They close at night, no criticism. That's what happens. That's where some of our warming centers can pick up what's going on. So we've opened 4, fully funding what came into us. Last year, my predecessor, Stefan Pryor, made huge efforts to get other partners to the table, and it's extremely difficult. People aren't as generous about addressing those people that live on the street as I think we would like them to be. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of stereotyping, a lot of misinformation. We've always had folks that need the support of the state and the community, and we need to revive some of that sense of humanity and civility, concern.
Going back to the emergency declaration, so it sounds like you're not totally against that or for it.
Yeah, I don't know what it would do, except maybe override fire code, and now I think and then what is it? It overrides fire code everywhere in every circumstance? I don't think anyone. So you got to be careful of these unintended consequences.
You're saying it could open up a can of worms?
Absolutely. A dangerous can of worms.
Yeah.
And I believe people are getting off the street.
That makes more sense. So let's talk about the organizational plan that you guys submitted to the General Assembly.
Sure.
Now, it would allow the state, the department, to make more decisions. Is this meant to take decisions away from cities and towns at all?
No, by no means. But from a state perspective, establishing state policy, that's been diverse and diffuse. So this is saying, okay, here it is. It's really clear. The Department of Housing leads on policy and program development for the state. Municipalities still have to be a huge partner. We can't get housing built without them. But the governance proposal wouldn't take any authority away from localities.
Are you concerned that they could still try blocking a lot of what you propose? For example, with affordable housing, we have seen so much of yes, we need it so badly, but not in my backyard.
That has been a perennial problem for housing everywhere, right? So I think it's really important that we work at the community level. I was one of the co-authors of the Pathways to Reducing Obstacles grant that we got, and that focuses on creating grassroots support. And part of that is diffusing the fear and the stereotypes too, right? And you may have heard me say this, I've said it a number of times, helping people understand how good design can really facilitate acceptance, and overcome the stereotypes. Oh, rental housing, block, big thing, and it doesn't have to be that way. It can be broken up, it can make use of topography. It can be sited such that 6 units looks from the street the same as the larger house next door to it, the single family. So I think design is really important, and we are working in 2 ways. We're putting money out. We're going to help create a design toolkit for municipalities to use, and we're also creating a design toolkit for our health equity zones and our nonprofit developers to use. We also have to support capacity for nonprofit developers. They stick with it, right? And they have credence in the communities in which they work. So I think we have to be that facilitator. We have to use different language. No one knows what extremely low income means or 30% of AMI, right? But if you say minimum wage is less than that, and they go, oh, if you say one of the growing career opportunities in our country and locally is LPNs, and here's what they make, and here's what that means when you say 30%. Now you've got people like, oh, and I'm not to say, I don't mean to say that I think it's okay that anyone disparages people of low income, but what my job is in part to do is to overcome the stereotypes that enhance that fear.
Right. You think people have created this fear in their mind over who it actually is
Yes.
moving next door.
Yes.
Let's talk about Charlesgate. Right now, how many people are living there? Do you know, like an estimate?
I don't know. I'm not good on that.
Okay.
We can get it to you. I mean, my staff clearly know.
I think I did a story, I want to say over a year ago. And it was before the state had officially purchased it, so it was still being rented out by organizations. Do you know if the goal is still the families that are there, get them on their feet into permanent housing, move them out as soon as possible?
Yeah, and we're moving another program into it. So the purpose was, right, get it off the speculative market, protect it for the use that it's serving. And so we are taking a good look at the capital needs. We want to get the building, and then my goal is then to put it out to permanent ownership by a developer and manager who will continue the use for these populations. But having removed it from the speculative market and having preserved the use that it was serving.
So the state would sell it. When would you like that to happen by?
I haven't broached a particular date, but again, I think I want to make sure that the populations, we're moving a new program in. So I need to make sure that whatever I'm putting out on the market understands what it is. So it won't be overnight. That's okay. We'll take care of the property. We've got good programs in there.
Would there be any concerns that it could then be, repurposed if it was sold?
Not if we put the right restrictions on the funding, or maybe ground lease it. I'm a big proponent of, here's the lawyer in me again, I'm a big proponent of ground leases. They're a very effective tool for preserving uses.
So I have to ask, why sell it? Do you not think the state should have purchased the building?
I just don't think it's the best use of state resources. And managing residential real estate is not the same as managing facilities. So I think set it up correctly and let the people who do this for their everyday life and living own and run it.
Okay, so your goal would be to sell it, still be an asset to homeless people and let them live there.
Yeah.
But the state should not be in the business of.
I don't think it's the best use of our skills. The skills don't match.
Okay. Interesting. All right, with your organizational plan, I think my only other question is, obviously you wanted a name change. For some people, hearing this, they're going to say, isn't that small potatoes compared to everything else going on right now?
Yes.
Yeah. Why the name change?
That's just it's probably the simplest thing in the whole report, right? Every other head of a department is an executive office of. So it's, are we going to die? That's at stake? No, absolutely not. Is it just a little change that it puts housing on parity with its sister agencies? And do I think housing should be on parity with sister agencies? Absolutely. So you have executive office of HHS, and under that you have departments. So housing's not under anyone. So just put it back up there and have it talk to its peers with the same stature.
But it's not like a make or break for you guys.
Oh,
You just
God,
kinda
no.
threw it- Okay.
Oh, God, no.
What was the last question I was going to ask you? The department overall, there has been a lot of resignations there. Obviously, like I said, you were the fourth secretary or department head, and we've seen several other high-profile people resign. Is that a problem within the department? Is the department not getting enough funding where people feel like they can't do their jobs? What do you think is behind that?
I'm not going to handle the four of my three of my predecessors, because those were all different circumstances. Some of the staff that have left, one gentleman's getting his license in social work, and God love him, and that's where he was going, and he'll still serve the same people as he was serving in our homeless unit. I won't speak for Tara or Deb. They're moving to other opportunities. Deb has moved to Deb Flannery to another opportunity. Clearly, the lack of stable leadership has had an impact on everyone. And I've offered to meet with anyone in the staff that want to meet with me. And one gentleman, it took him about 20 minutes as he circled around. Then he finally said, this is going to be difficult. I said, He said, it's going to need someone who's made a commitment to stay. I said, I've made that commitment. He's like, okay. That's just what he just needed to hear, you know, that there's going to be some stability.
Right, makes sense. A lot of
Yeah.
changes in leadership, and therefore staff feels like they're
Yeah.
not supported.
Yeah.
So where do you envision this department being a year from now?
Fully staffed, a set of calendars around getting our contracts out. That makes sense for everyone. We're going to change we're changing the calendar on block grant, for instance, and doing contracts for 2-year cycles. You know, let's stop chasing the paper every year. And the municipalities may not know that yet because the notice may not have gone out yet, but it's on its way. They'll be happy. They'll be fine. And clarity of purpose, and then again, a reimagined response to the homeless situation. A real clarity of roles. How do we help people not exit into it? If they do exit into it, how do we respond quickly, and how do we stabilize them and move them on? And this is going to require partners throughout the state agencies. It's going to require partnership with public housing authorities, private developers. There are models out there. I don't want to say it's not rocket science because it has so many moving pieces, but there are best practices. There are models out there. And we're going to get there. We're going to get something out. It won't take a year. In a year from now, we'll be in implementation.
Can you say that next January we won't be in this position where we're scrambling when it gets cold to house the homeless?
If we are, I should not be in my position.